And I'm sure he will combine the two to tell us many, many, many words of wisdom and to encourage the graduates to be better than him. And to be better than more, you have to work very hard. So let's listen to what he has to say to encourage the graduates to be better than him. Mugo, here you are.
Come on, everybody, get your feet happy. Let's go, come on.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning, all. Morning once again. The Chancellor of Management University of Africa, again, my good friend, architect Dr. Ruben Mutiso, a man who has done very many things for this country over very many years, and was an integral part of Vision 2030, actually, driving one of our top flagship projects for a long time, Konza, amongst many other things. Chairperson of the Council, Madam Joki Kahega, somebody also I've known for a long time, and who has also done, everyone sitting over here behind me has done a lot in this country, and are role models for all of you. The Kim and Mua Council members, my good friend, the Executive Director and CEO of Kim, Dr. Mureithi Ndegwa and I also go back a very long way. We were once schoolmates in a school I won't talk about. We were also once workmates in many respects. We were once both at East African Cables. He's also been a big part of Vision 2030 with the role that he had at KTB. And I'm glad to be here with my friend today, Vice Chancellor of MOA, all distinguished guests, faculty members, parents and guardians who are very important. It's good to have this screen because it tells me that I'm not properly dressed. I have to be properly dressed, otherwise I'm disrespecting the graduates today. And most importantly, the graduating class of 2025, because you are the real chief guests today. And I am honored and privileged to stand here before you today on this 22nd graduation ceremony of Kim. And today we celebrate not only the accomplishments of the class of 2025, which are great, but also the legacy, the enduring legacy of an institution that continues to shape leaders for Kenya, Africa, and the world. We stand here, graduates, not at a finish line, but at a launch pad. The degree that you will hold, the diplomas that you will hold, will be your license to disrupt. And I know that disruption has been a buzzword for very many years, but the world we live in today means you have to be so disruptive that you have to keep disrupting yourselves in your career. Your career, unlike mine, and mine actually was not that standard. A lot of people used to say that, I've done very many things, I've self-disrupted, compared especially to the people who came before us, who had one long career for 30, 40 years. Yours will be a very different world. You will have to keep renewing yourself, and that is why I say what you're getting today is a license to disrupt both the ecosystem you're going into and the world, but also to keep self-disrupting. Your generation, unlike mine, for better or for worse, will not have the comfort of settling down into a career. There'll be many rapid changes over the many years of your career. And we shall come to that. Let me say that, speaking of Kim, of which I am a fellow, I'm very proud to be here today and to be part of this Kim Moore event, because management and leadership, and especially excellence in management and leadership, is something we sorely need in this country and in this region today. And Kim, for 71 years, has been at the center of ensuring that our corporate world, our public sector, our academic sector is populated with managers who are excellent managers and who have great leadership skills and who understand what their role in society is. The theme, I am told, of today's graduation is scaling higher, redefining leadership and competence in a borderless world. And I think to the management, that's a very apt theme, because it speaks to the world which these graduates are going into. We talked about globalization when I was growing up in my career. But the kind of globalization that we have seen over the last 40 years, ups and downs, has been very government-led, policy-led. You've had the East African community being revived. You have had the OAU turned into AU. You have had up north the EEC becoming the EU. You have had NAFTA in my career being signed by a president, an American president and a Canadian and a Mexican counterpart, and then being destroyed by an American president in that lifetime. So very policy-driven, government-led, whereas the world you're going into will truly not just be about globalization, but about a borderless world that is driven organically by technology, by young people whose cultural bent is more universal than ours was. The world we grew up in, I grew up very Kenyan. Our friends across the border grew up very Tanzanian, very Ugandan. But you can see, and without wanting to elaborate too much, how the upcoming generation, your generation, whether they are in Kenya or Tanzania or Uganda or the US, are culturally very similar. Truly borderless. In fact, I see the current leadership wondering what to do with this new generation that refuses to be merely Kenyan or Ugandan or Tanzanian or Rwandan and sees itself as a universal global citizenry. So again, a very apt thing, which I hope you take to heart and understand. I actually believe you understand it better than I do, better than the people sitting on this podium. The speakers before me have spoken about some of the themes here. Competence is agility. The need to adapt, innovate, and collaborate again across borders. But as I turn to you, graduates, and addressing you graduates, the speakers before me have indicated that today is your day. This is your moment. You're entering a world that will demand your boldness, creativity, and ethical conviction. Graduation is not the end, but the beginning of a new journey. When I graduated from Moore University over 30 years ago, our dean told us that all the books that we had read, I studied electrical engineering, all the books that we had read, really we should just forget about the contents of those books. I didn't realize how right he was, because today if you ask me about any of the books and lessons I studied from first year to third year, I really can't recall. And especially in engineering, which is a fast-changing discipline. But what he did tell us was that what he was charging us with was the ability to refer, the ability to consult, whatever it is you need to consult, whether it be books, whether it would be all sorts of reference sources, people, teacher, that you are now in a lifelong learning process. It isn't what you have studied. And don't get me wrong, what you studied in your diploma and in your degree is very important because it has taught you certain discipline, certain ethical basics. But the most important thing is that you must be able to get information that is relevant to you at the time you need it, when you need it, from wherever you need to get it. That is what you really need to get out of this. That tomorrow, or next year, or 10 years from now, whatever role you'll be playing, whatever challenge you will have, you will not necessarily be referred to what you did at MOA in 2024, 25, you and disciplined you to understand how to go about securing the information and the knowledge that you need in that future. Your mindset must be a futuristic mindset. As I said, you must commit to continuous learning to stay ahead. You must treat your career like software and yourself like software. You know what it is to do, and you know about software. There are versions every other year, new versions. You start with a version 1.2, 2.2, 3.2, 4.0. So you must see yourself today as the better version of yourself. And when I say better, I don't mean the political, whatever, but better as in a Greek word, better version. And you must treat yourself as the better version of yourself today that you'll keep upgrading and renewing as time goes by. And this cannot be gainsaid, that for your generation, it will have to be a lot more frequent than it has been for ours. System. Ethical leadership is critical, not just to yourself as an individual and to your family and to your institutions and to this country, but globally. Influence without integrity is destructive. As you lead beyond borders, your ethical conviction must be non-negotiable. The operating system of your professional life must be integrity. That software that we've said that you are, that has to be upgraded every 1, 2, 3 years, must have as its operating system what we used to call MS-DOS in our day. I'm sure you guys haven't heard of it. And it became Windows, and it became all sorts of things thereafter. That operating system must be integrity. Because your reputation, in the world that we're moving into, and it's been true even in our time, your reputation is your most valuable algorithm. You must protect it. Be ethical leaders. And let me just stop here and say that universities, colleges such as SKIM, train us to be professionals. You are a professional graduating today. And when I look at the various professionals of my generation and before me, we have defined the word profession in a very narrow way. We say the legal profession. I am an engineer by profession. I am a doctor by profession. I am an architect by profession. And that is true. But that is not the definition of a profession, or a professional for that matter. That is the technical component of a professional. The other larger component of a professional is the ethics that comes along with the technical aspect of that profession. That is why doctors take the Hippocratic oath. Without them taking that oath, they're not professional, they're not doctors. And that oath is... You cannot be an engineer without the ethics that compel you to make sure that your products, whether they be roads or rail or power, are up to standard. You don't cut corners. You cannot be a member of the legal profession again if you cut corners as a judge or as a lawyer. So I would like to say that we are not overstating it when you talk about ethics, because part of your training, part of being a professional is a technical aspect combined with the ethical aspect. Professionals who are technically proficient, you could be a super technical doctor or lawyer or engineer, but without ethics, you are more dangerous than the least competent, the least technically competent engineers and doctors and lawyers, or accountants for that matter. So, and this is something that I cannot overstate. We have needed for a long time. I once was invited to speak to the Council of Engineers at their annual gathering. And when they came to my office to brief me and to make the invitation, I made a cardinal mistake trying to be professional. I told them that when I came, the speech that I would make to them would be a candid speech, a candid presentation of how I felt about the engineering, the status of the engineering profession in this country. That I would say that there's something very wrong with the profession, with the institution itself, in which ethics are a core component of membership, when we have the kind of roads we have in this country, the kind of power system we have in this country, that these engineers are responsible for, and which are clearly not up to standard. Why? Because of the ethical bit missing. And the fact that I believe that the institutions of which we are members should enforce ethics, disbar people who are not following professional ethics. The long and short of it is that I did not get the invitation because I think the truth was too hard to bear. But it is important that we insist on the danger of having technical expertise without the ethics that goes with it. The legacy of responsibility. The late Professor Wangari Maathai famously said, the generation that destroys the environment is not the generation that pays the price. Let me repeat that. The generation that destroys the environment is not the generation that pays the price. And in the same way, the decisions that you make today, and more importantly, that you will make during your career, will define the next century. The council chair has spoken about Vision 2030, but also Agenda 2063, which is the African agenda. And I believe very soon we shall have to develop our own Kenya Vision 2063, because we're just 5 years away from 2030. We will need to have something for you guys to do and to look forward to and to transform this country properly. And so, what you'll be doing as soon as you step out of here will have a tremendous impact on people who will be graduating, sitting where you're sitting in the year 2063. And that is an awesome responsibility that you have. Therefore, you cannot settle. You must refuse to settle for mediocrity and strive for continuous excellence. One of the things that that for me has been important is to live what I call living the examined life. Periodic self-examination. 5 years from today, 5 years from today, I need you to stop, go somewhere for a 2-day retreat by yourself, and ask yourselves, the last 5 years, have they gone as I had hoped and expected? Did I do to do? And did I do them in the manner that I had committed to do? Was I professional in the way I did it? Was I technically professional, but not ethically professional? What is it that I could have done better? I feel that a lot of us do not self-examine. And self-examination, it doesn't have to be 5 years. It could be an annual self-examination. It's up to you, what works for you. But it is important always to stop and look back. Stop and look back and ask yourself, I made some, it's like New Year resolutions, they say, which nobody ever follows. But it is critically important to do that because a lot of things change that you do not either expect to change or that you cannot predict. And yet, you must deal with them. Even as I stand here, giving guidance, even your teachers about the future, the fact of the matter is, we know very little about the future. Extremely little. When I was graduating, those many, many years ago, I graduated, sat where you're sitting, started working, without ever having seen the internet, without ever having sent an email or received one. Mobile phones and SMSs were in the distant future. And yet, along the way, the internet found me. Mobile phones found me. And they became part of my world. And yet, when I was studying in university, that wasn't the way we were taught. Is that the changes that used to happen 30, 40 years ago are now happening much more rapidly, as you all know. So that self-examination will become very, very important. Vision 2030 has been mentioned, and I'll mention it again. And Vision 2030, forming this country into one in which every citizen has a decent life. It's as simple as that. A decent livelihood. And that is why the things that we refer to as flagship projects cannot be buzzwords. And you're stepping into that. We need a country in which every citizen has access to education, decent education. Every citizen has access to decent health care. So when you hear the term universal health care, sometimes it can become a buzzword. But all that means is that we want every citizen, when they need to see a doctor, will access a doctor. When they need a hospital, they'll access a hospital. When they need drugs, medicine, they will access it affordably and easily. To get that done, you require those who are the professionals, that is yourselves. Those who have, and make no mistake, the fact that you're sitting where you're sitting, the mere fact that you're sitting where you're sitting today, you are an elite member of the citizenry of this country. You're privileged. And you know that old adage, to whom much is given, much is expected. Because you will do things, make decisions, lead projects, conceive projects, that will affect many, many of your fellow citizens who do not have the opportunity to be the professionals that you are turning into today. That's an obligation that you must carry, a responsibility that you must take seriously and not lightly. Also, many of you are starting one way, and maybe you're starting as, you've taken all sorts of diplomas and degrees in management, in BCom or commerce or accounting, whatever it is you've done. Inevitably, many of you will deviate into different career directions that may not necessarily be what you think you're going into now after this. And this is whether as an employee or as an entrepreneur, as a public servant. And as you deviate into all those professional situations, the ethics you must carry your ethics along with you. You must have integrity to yourself as an individual. I can tell you that I have many people I started with, friends, people I went to school with, and we started our careers, and we thought we had similar values until some of them ventured into the field of politics. And I wondered, who is this guy? Cannot be the same person I've been working with all these years. And why? It is important that what we are discussing today isn't just to jumpstart your career and then you forget about it when you're up there. Obviously, there are certain professions or professional situations that are more challenging than others, that require you to step up in terms of ethics and integrity a little more than others. As you rise in leadership, and you will, many of you will rise into leadership positions, will be CEOs, members of parliament, maybe even members of cabinet in this country. And the higher up you go, the more difficult it will be to stay true to yourself. Both because of the temptations, but as well as the pressures of responsibility, the higher up you go. And this is why I say that this is just the beginning of the journey. The learning, the training, the self-disciplining, the muscles of a professional career that you're building, you will have to continue building them throughout your career. So that the early part of your career, post-graduation, prepares you for the next part of your career or your professional development. So by the time you get to true leadership positions, you have had a continuous learning, continuously self-disruptive view of yourself. You have been self-examining yourself periodically to see how you're growing. And that growth is not just professionally or academically, but also spiritually. You will have families. And of course, we need you to have families. Every nation needs that. And they will depend on you. And your values and your ethics will form the core of your families. And from those families will come citizens who will sit where you're sitting and determine our future, your future especially. And you want them to have grown up in proper families that have ethics and values, where what you do when you go out the door into your professional world and what you do when you come back home, there is integrity in it. That is all I can say to you today. Europe. When I was in primary school and